Maik wishes you well.
I have always felt that the Elder Scrolls series, at its core, is character-driven. Sure, there are huge prophecies and set pieces that kind of frame the action, but for us players, it's all about who we are interacting with. Close allies, great villains, memorable quests, both big and small. Pretty much everything we're doing is propelled by the people that we meet. Dagoth Mankar Cameron, Martin Septum, and then even smaller characters like Nazim, Fargoth, Jazargo, the Adoring Fan. I think you get my point. It's all of those NPCs together that make the world so rich and give the fandom all of this kind of extra entertainment. And while all those characters are very cool, none of them can rival the unique quality of today's NPC. A simple Khajiit who wanders the landscape in humble attire. Some would call him a legendary drifter, others a poet, scholar, historian, comedian, enigma. Liar! Maik the Liar has been one of the most commonly requested videos from me for a very long time, so it feels so awesome to finally tackle this one. And if this is your first time finding my channel and you like video game lore, character analysis, game reviews, and other stuff like that, you, my friend, are in the right place. I'm Ghost, your host, and without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive in. Maik is, as I stated, extremely unique. A wandering NPC that is a beacon of humor, misinformation, and profound commentary. He almost seems to exist outside the boundaries the rest of the characters in Tamriel are within. Some have even called him a god, a Daedra, a being who has already achieved Kim, but hold up now.
Slow down, baby.
Regardless of what you think he is certainly one thing, a fan-favorite character. So, a question for you viewers. What do you think it takes for a character in a video game, or really a video game series, to become a kind of cult fan favorite? It of course can be many different things, but I would boil it down to a few possibilities. Number one, the character is funny. Sure, humor is a welcome sight in any kind of grim fantasy game like this, where the world is often ending and thousands are dying every day to some sort of calamity.
Say the line!
Khajiit?
Maik knows many things.
Number two, the character is interesting or mysterious. If something is mysterious, you want to circle back a few times, get a second or third look and try to decipher a little bit more. Maybe even hop online, watch some poopy videos like this one. And number three, the character is a recurring presence across an entire series. We've gotten to know a few characters like that on my channel, and this definitely helps with that cult status. I mean, the guy just keeps popping up, what are you gonna do? Well, my friends, if I do say so myself, and I do, Maik is all three and so much more, because he is simultaneously the most useless NPC in the whole series, while also being probably the most entertaining, the silliest, and the most intriguing. You see, Maik is not really much of an NPC at all. He's kind of an anti-NPC. He doesn't give you quests, items, or advance the story in any way. He is much more of a rule breaker, a character that is here largely for shits and giggles. Maik is, in essence, a representation of Bethesda themselves. You can think of him as a direct line of communication between the developers and us, an all-knowing, wisecracking character who provides commentary on the very design of the game and beyond, leaning directly on the fourth wall. He makes witty comments about cut features, story concepts, creatures, locations, and even talks about us, the fans. Some would say he's an immersion-breaking Easter egg, but I say he's also a compelling character within the game world, and that is key to me, because regardless of his design intention of being very meta, here he is in Tamriel, right? We have to justify that somehow. He's a citizen of the world, so what kind of character is he then? Who is he? Does he really lie every time he speaks? If so, is his name even really Maik? It's a long video, man. We're gonna get to all the theories much later on, don't worry. But Maik has had a tendency to pop up across the great eras of Tamriel. He is not bound by time nor space. He has appeared in Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and the Elder Scrolls Online. That is a great span of many years we're talking about, and he has far outlived the average lifespan of your average Khajiit. So I want to go ahead and do something kind of insane with this video. I want to start at the beginning of his appearances and literally analyze everything he says.
You serious?
And that ain't no lie, baby. Every single thing, in the mainline games anyway, because his appearance in ESO is a little bit different for me, and I will cover it, but we'll get to that later. I want to find out what every single quote is a reference to, or what he is making fun of. And then afterward, we'll talk about lore theories and stuff. So if you want to skip to that, go ahead, use the chapters feature. I won't be offended. I could care less, because this is going to be a very, very long video. And keep in mind, all of these breakdowns are simply my interpretation. Don't take anything I say as law, and feel free to share what you think about each of these quotes as well. So let's do this, man. Let's waste some time together talking about Ma'ik the Liar. In Morrowind, the interaction takes place in the year 427 of the Third Era, and the original Ma'ik the Liar was quite stationary. Later on, he is known to wander around the world and be a chance encounter kind of thing, but here, he can simply be located on a small island just off Dagon Fell. And god damn, let's take a second to appreciate how absolutely swagged the hell out this man is. The Colovian fur helm is looking real minty with that expensive shirt. The rest of his regalia, just an absolute G unit right off the bat. Sadly, Morrowind does not have full-on voice acting yet, so in its place, this.
This is me attempting to do Ma'ik's voice. It sucks.
Ma'ik immediately strikes the player as something different from the typical interaction to this point. So begins the legend, and let's just, well, start at the top with his greeting, because it is already a treat.
Greetings. Ma'ik knows many things. What is your interest? You seek knowledge. Ma'ik has much. Some of it verified by actual facts.
The simple fact that his name is Ma'ik the Liar and cites actual facts to come is definitely enough to want to hear more. And just like that, you find all of these topics that you can ask Ma'ik about. Now, a few of these things are obviously features that did not make the final release of the game or something, and some of them are a little more interesting, like nudity and the Dwemer. So okay, just really quick, can we get a live look at the average Elder Scrolls lorehead? Okay, and one more. Yeah, it's no secret that this series has some of the most hardcore lorebeard fans out there. And for very, very good reason. I mean, the lore here is amazing and deep, with so many gaps and mysterious things to kind of theorize about. So I also totally see Ma'ik as a legit troll. An NPC that at first glance might have some seriously intriguing lore to share, but just says some total bullshit to make people read into it before realizing it is a gag. When you ask him about becoming a lich, he replies with,
You wish to become a lich? It is very easy, my friend. Simply find the heart of a lich, combine it with the tongue of a dragon, and cook it with the flesh of a well-ridden horse. This combination is certain to make you undead.
Right off the bat, this one is a bunch of hooey. You cannot become a lich, and you cannot even get any of these materials. But this was maybe a foreshadowing to the Tribunal expansion to come, where liches were added as enemies. Next up, dragons.
Dragons? Oh, they are everywhere. You must fly very high to see most of them, though. The ones nearer the ground are very hard to see, being invisible.
If I'm being honest, this one has always kind of puzzled me. It's definitely somewhat nonsensical, but maybe he's referring to dragon burial mounds, or the sort of spirit of dragons that Dragonborn can absorb, meaning that when they physically die, they're still here, but invisible? Oh shit, look at that. I'm getting lost in his lies already, man. Alright, I'm a fool. Moving on. The next topic for Ma'ik is emperor crabs.
Ma'ik sees lots of them in the ocean. Ma'ik knows you'll see one too if you swim far enough.
Now, emperor crabs are actually very much a real thing in Tamriel, or rather, they were. This is an extinct species of big-ass crabs that left behind shells that were used in Vardenfell to construct various buildings. Ma'ik is suggesting that they still live somewhere far, far out there, but of course, cats don't like water, so this has to be bullshit. You don't swim, Ma'ik. Next is horses.
Horses? Oh, Ma'ik loves horses, especially with good cream sauce. You would wish to ride upon a beast? There is a way. Go to one of the many Siltstrider ports and pay your fee. You wish one for personal use? Bah! Walk if you must. Run if you are chased.
This, to me, is a jest about the lack of rideable horses in Morrowind, something that seems like it would very much be present in the region, especially with all these Imperial dudes around, but instead, you stick to loading screen transportation via Silt Strider or teleporting, something like that. Alright, Maik, how about moving corpses?
Moving corpses? This sounds frightening to Maik. The undead are nothing to be toyed with.
Now, if this comment were in the later games, I would think it's a reference to how players can drag corpses, ragdoll them around, and how many of us probably end up having a bit of fun with it. But here, honestly, I think Maik is just talking about the undead. Very interestingly, next you can ask about multiplayer.
Maik does not know this word. You wish others to help you in your quest? Coward. If you must, search for the Argonian, Aimlit, or perhaps the Big Nord, Rolf the Uber. They will certainly wish to join you.
This one is so on the nose, you can't help but give a little chuckle, or at the very least, exhale sharply from your nose in amusement. Apparently, early on in development, multiplayer was something that was legitimately thrown around the room over at Bethesda, possibly even as like an optional plugin for an expansion down the road, but obviously, this was never meant to be. Then you got I'm Leet and Rolf the Uber. These are very, 2002 gamer jokes, so I am shocked that they still make me chuckle today. It's good stuff. And right here, us loreheads are salivating. A hot button lore topic.
There is no mystery. Maik knows all. The dwarves were here, and now they are not. They were very short folks. Or perhaps they were not. It all depends on your perspective. I'm sure they thought they were about the right height.
Now that is one beautiful political answer from Maik, goddamn. Technically true, everything he said. The second half of this one is a lot of fun though, because some theorize that giants gave Dwemer the name dwarves simply because, from their perspective, they were super short. But as always, who knows? And from the Dwemer ghosts we see in game and stuff, I mean, they're like our height. They're not little guys. Well, damn, how you gonna follow that up, Maik? How about by talking about naked liches and nudity in general?
A horrible thing indeed. If you see one, let Maik know. Maik wants to make sure to look in the other direction. Ah, the beauty of the naked form. These Dunmer are rather prudish, are they not? Of course, there is an island you can reach filled with wonderful, naked, glistening bodies. It only appears when the moons are full, the rain falls, the seas run red, and it's Maik's birthday.
A naked lich would, well, be all bones, and I guess he said he was scared of undead earlier, so no bones for Maik. But the second quote, I think, is poking fun at the fact that the first two Elder Scrolls games featured plenty of just straight-up naked folks. I'm talking weenies, titties, flying around with ferocity. It's very understandable that this feature didn't make the leap to the 3D games because, well, I think a low-poly Dunmer dick just kinda hits different, and the industry was changing a lot, but at least it sounds like Maik usually has a very happy birthday. The Daggerfall commentary kinda continues when he talks about climbing here.
Climbing ropes that hang is too difficult. Maik prefers to climb the ones that are tied horizontally.
Climbing was one of the skills that was removed totally with the release of Morrowind, to some purists' dismay. And many other skills also were either outright cut or combined into other things. This trend would continue with the following games as the series became more and more streamlined to reach a larger audience. But are you sitting down? Whoever's watching this video, sit down, because you are about to be shocked. Maik is about to tell a complete truth rooted in reality. Not only that, but it kickstarts the player on a Daedric quest when he tips you off to the location of the Shrine of Boethia.
You seek the shrine that is no longer there? An interesting concept. Look to the seas to the west. There lies what was once the shrine. Take a deep breath and begin your search.
Now, this is actually a sort of second secret way to find the location of the shrine, but it's odd that he just tells you this. I mean, maybe it's meant to be a trick, like the player is having this conversation with this funky cat and assumes everything he's saying is just hogwash at this point. So let's just toss like a real thing in there to mess with them, and then once they find the shrine, question everything that they just experienced. It's possible. Next is what? Mudcrab merchants? The hell are you talking about, Maik?
Maik has heard of this. They've got all their money. Mudcrabs taking over everything. They already run Pelagiad.
This one also not a total lie or fabrication. There is indeed a friendly mud crab who acts as a merchant, and he is known to be the richest merchant in the entire game.
Yo, Spliff, where the weed at? Give me some more.
So, yes, they've got all the money. This dude holds 10,000 big ones, so you can go to him to sell all your rare stuff. And this mud crab merchant is also a bit of an Easter egg type character, so it's really fitting that Maik mentions him to us. And again, another thing to throw in there and make us be like, what are you talking about, Maik? You're crazy. And then you find this merchant and you're like, dude, can I become a lich, bro? What the hell? And finally, our last quote within Morrowind is on the topic of were-sharks.
I have only met one, but he was afraid of the water.
I think here Maik is simply calling attention to the fact that in Daggerfall, were creatures were extremely common, all kinds. But, looking a bit further, the book in-game known as On Lycanthropy by Varnard Karesin mentioned were-sharks, and it states, the seventh lycanthrope, which I have never seen but my trusted peers have assured me exists, is a were-shark that roams the oceans around Tamriel. Now could it be that the author had spoken with none other than Maik on this topic? Just something to think about. So this is the original Maik, a smaller pool of lies for sure, but all very interesting and funny quotes, no doubt. What you may not know is that in the code he is classified as a rogue, one of the starting classes here in Morrowind. The description of the class states that rogues have a gift for getting in and out of trouble, so I think it probably suits him. He also appears more dashing here. I mean, he got the drip. This is way before he dons his iconic robes and then race change from Suthai Rot Khajiit to Firstock Khajiit, because yes, they're different, okay? He also has a unique ability known as Maik's water walking. This of course allows him to walk on water without falling in. I think he probably has this ability because he's on a little island and the developers just didn't want him to bug out or get stuck in the water or drown. And also, he's a cat, he doesn't want to get wet. So overall, a very solid introduction. With any recurring character, it's always fun to look at that first iteration. Like, did the developers even know that they would stick him in the next game or all of the games from here on out? Maybe he was just a last-minute joke throw-in. But either way, who would have thought what he would become all these years later, man? Oblivion Maik is encountered not very long after in the lore, in the year 433 of the Third Era. And the Oblivion Crisis is surely a hectic time for everyone, right?
We're all that's left, do you understand me? Everyone else is dead!
So where can you find Maik during this catastrophe? Of course, running around in a skooma-induced fervor, searching high and low for calipers. No, I am not kidding at all. He begins his appearance just outside of Anvil, and henceforth will eternally run on this road. But every day, at exactly 12 o'clock noon, he stops running and begins to hunt for calipers. This takes him far and wide because it seems that calipers are all over the world. Caves, towns, camps, whatever. I mean, what the hell is this thing with the calipers? It's a measurement device, or kind of like tongs. Maybe it's a reference to him measuring out how much bullshit he can get away with telling people. I honestly have no clue. I think it's funny and random, and if you see him, you can actually drop calipers on the ground, and it might lure him over to you, which I just really like for some reason. And to make him even stranger, he is by far the fastest entity in the entire game of Oblivion. There is almost no chance of catching up to him naturally if he runs away from you. The man is Usain Bolt with level 100 speed and athletics in the game files. He will even take off and run away into other provinces. You obviously can't do anything except watch him go, unable to follow. But if you can finally slow his ass down and get your hands on him, we see that Maik has gone through a bit of a facelift.
Maik knows much, tells some. Maik knows many things others do not.
He is now wearing those robes, has voice acting, different anatomy, and many, many more things to say. But I think this kind of wardrobe change leans into what they were deciding the character was going to be into the future, which is kind of like a wandering prophet. And I don't know many wandering prophets that are dripped out in the Supreme like in Morrowind. And now when you talk to him, he is not just a catalog of madness to flip through like he was previously. All you can ask him about is rumors, and you get a random Maik quote before he sprints away into the distance like a deranged toddler. Many, if not all of these things are references to cut features or fan controversy in some way on the forums. There is a lot of sass in this Maik, that is for sure. So, let's see what he has to say.
Maik longs for a Colovian fur helm. Practical, yet stylish. Maik is very sad he does not have one.
Of course, this poor man misses his hat. I mean, I feel it. Maybe when they redid his anatomy and stuff, they had to leave the hat out. But this is also a joke about how there is no Colovian furhelm or gear in the entire game whatsoever, even though it's very likely you're talking to Maik somewhere near the region of Colovia. What the hell, Bethesda?
Mike believes the children are our future, but he doesn't want them ruining all of our fun.
Alright, this one is pretty weird. Long ago, before the game came out, for whatever reason, adding children to it or not was a hotly contested topic on those official forums. One camp believed that if the game was truly going to innovate the genre, children had to be added to create a more realistic world. But another camp argued that having children present in the game would be morally wrong, because you could theoretically turn it into a child murderer's sim chamber. The pro-children camp responded that you could just make them invincible, which pretty much undermined their initial campaign for realism. As Maik alludes to, there ain't no kids in this game at all. Now, this next quote is notoriously bugged, and for the life of me, I cannot get the audio clip to play, so I'm just gonna do it with my Morrowind Maik voice, and I apologize, this is the last time you'll have to hear it.
Maik wishes he had a stick made out of fishies to give to you. Sadly, he does not.
Maik has officially tapped into some ancient lore, also relating to the old official Bethesda forums. So before Morrowind even came out, way back in the Stone Ages, for some reason, a Jack Daniels advertisement was converted into the guy holding a big-ass fish stick with the added text, "Have a fishy stick." It was then used as like a badge of honor given out to those deemed worthy on the forums. This evolved over the years to be a welcoming message to new people, and Bethesda, for whatever reason, really loved it. There are a couple references to it across the games, and Maik, of course, is in on the joke, but he doesn't have the authority to give out the fishy stick. So begins a slew of quotes that are directed right at the fans, and listening to some of that criticism of how the series was changing over time.
Mike thinks his people are beautiful. The Argonian people are beautiful as well. They look better than ever before.
I mean, a lot of people were really pissed about the way the beast races were looking in Oblivion before it came out, that they were kind of just the men and Myrrh with a beast head slopped on top, that they had lost their unique charm and identity. But Maik isn't going to stand for that slander. He thinks they look good, and I, for one, think they look just fine. I mean, you're mostly just seeing the character head anyway, right?
Some people wish to throw their weapons. That seems foolish to Maik. If you hold your weapon, you only need one.
Another thing cut from Oblivion, no thrown weapons. Ugh, still bums me out to this day, dude. I would love to be able to toss a rain of throwing stars at Mankar Cameron's big-ass forehead. That would be, objectively, a good feature.
Some people want special bows that take too long to load and need special arrows called bolts. Maik thinks they are idiots.
Crossbows too were something that were announced to not be in the game, and while this would be a cool addition, I mean, it ain't the biggest deal in the world, man. Throwing weapons are way more unique to me. But this is a hot, spicy meatball right here. I mean, it's crazy that he just says, they're idiots. Whoever wrote that dialogue was definitely reading way too many forum posts.
Feet are for walking. Hands are for hitting, or shaking, or waving, sometimes for clapping.
A direct call of attention to the loud demands and full-on campaign for Bethesda to add a kicking feature to Oblivion. Now this one, I gotta admit, would be pretty damn good. Have you ever played Dark Messiah? Man, you can straight kick your way through the entire game. I would go so far as to say that's the main feature of Dark Messiah. And it would be awesome. It would fit so well into Oblivion. So Maik, I gotta disagree with you, buddy.
Maik prefers to adventure alone. Others just get in the way, and they talk.
While this is obviously another comment on the lack of multiplayer, I also consider this a little bit of a joke about the adoring fan, and his entire character is kind of a commentary on this, that you think you want to play with other people until they're there, and they just won't shut the hell up.
Oh, gee. You sure?
Yeah.
People always enjoy a good fable. Maik has yet to find one, though. Perhaps one day.
Oh man, this one hurt me personally, dude. Lionhead Studios' Fable came out just 2 years before Oblivion, and it was legendary for the amount of unhealthy hype leading up to its release. Believe it or not, the first YouTube video I ever made was actually all about this. So go watch that if you dare. It's not great. But needless to say, as much as I adore that game, the hype was not met. There was disappointment. Well, during the dev cycle of Oblivion, given the setting and the recent climate of RPGs, it was often compared with Fable, which is totally dumb and unfair and unrelated. But Bethesda decided to take the gloves off and poke a little fun at Lionhead. Come on, man.
So much easier to get around these days. Not like the old days. Too much walking. Of course, nothing stops Mike from walking when he wants.
Forget Donald Trump and Joe Biden. This Thanksgiving, bring up fast travel in the Elder Scrolls and watch your aunts, uncles, cousins, dogs, everybody just rip each other apart. This is one of those things that truly separates the fan base and the older games from the new. It's convenient for sure, but many people were worried about losing the cool transit systems of Morrowind like silt striders, teleporters, and so on. Plus, just wandering the open world, people didn't want that aspect of the game to go away. But Mike ain't worried about that. He likes this new system. It helps that he had the running speed of a Formula 1 car, though.
Mike is glad he has a compass. Makes it easy to find things. Much better than wandering around like a fool.
In Morrowind, as you probably know, there are no quest markers. You gotta read, diagram your path, consult the stars, sacrifice a goat, pray to the divines, whatever it takes to find your destination. Some people love it, and some people hate it. But it seems like Mike is a bloomer. He's changing with the times, embracing the new tracking system.
Why would one want to swing a staff? A mace hurts more. Or a sword. Can't shoot a fireball from a sword, though.
Staves. Staves were once considered blunt weapons, things that you could swing like a bat and whack the shit out of people with. But in Oblivion, and later Skyrim, they turned them into just spell flingers, which pissed a lot of people off. But honestly, to me, I think it's better this way. However, the second half of the quote is referencing how swords could only be now enchanted with on-hit effects. You couldn't yeet spells with them anymore, and that is a damn shame.
I do not wish to fight on horseback. It is a good way to ruin a perfectly good horse, which is to say, a perfectly good dinner.
Believe it or not, horseback combat was long rumored to be in the game once people saw that horses were going to be in there. Well, when Bethesda announced that this would not be possible given the framework of the animations and system load, of course, people flipped out, absolutely lost it, to the tune of a petition signed by over 750 people demanding Bethesda reconsider. But alas, nothing could be done. And let's be really honest with ourselves, guys. If it had been added, it would have been buggy as all shit. Probably best that they knew their limits here. Then that last part of the quote about the horse being a good dinner is a reference to his line you might remember from Morrowind, where he said he likes the horse with the cream sauce. You're a freak, bro.
Levitation is for fools. Why would we want to levitate? Once you are up high, there is nowhere to go but down.
If there is one thing that Morrowind gets an A++ in, it is being able to fucking fly, dude. You can absolutely break the game with potions, scrolls, spells, whatever, and literally just yeet across all of Vardenfell. The systems that allowed this led to the game being a wonderful sandbox of insanity. You could become an absolute god, and of course, people liked that. Empower the players, man. Levitation, though, was not in the cards for Oblivion, and they even put a cap on jump height, which is a major bummer across the board. There is no other opinion to be had on this. I think they did this though because many areas of the game, like cities, are in their own individual cells, not actually all in the overworld at the same time, so jumping too high or falling into a town area would likely cause problems. But you know who would want to levitate Mike? Me, man. Me.
It is good the people wear clothing. Mike wears clothing. Who would want to see Mike naked? Sick, sick people. Very sad.
The scantily clad heroes of the 2D era were now cemented in the past. And Mike is also poking fun, I think, at those who mod the game heavily to feature more unsavory things. You are all sick bastards, the lot of you.
I don't know why one would want to destroy a building. It takes time to make it. Much time.
For some reason, the fans of 2005 were expecting some sort of destructible environments from Bethesda here. Another instance, though, of the team hearing that and realizing yeah, the game we already have is pretty buggy, and this simply is not going to work, even remotely, no chance.
Werewolves? Where? Wolves? Men that are wolves? Many wolves. Everywhere. Many men. That is enough for Maik.
Shockingly, while making this video, I came to this realization that there are no werewolves in Oblivion. None. Who knows why, but Maik is happy he doesn't have to deal with them. But my friends, for Oblivion Maik, I saved the best for last.
I have seen dragons. Perhaps you will see a dragon. I won't say where I saw one. Perhaps I did not.
Many people, myself included, believe this is the first hint at the next game in the series taking place in Skyrim and involving ancient dragons. But it also could just be a foreshadowing to the climax of the game when Martin Septim does his thing. But this quote is Maik at his best, cryptic yet close to a truth or two, and making us turn our wheels a bit. If I'm being honest, fellas, Oblivion Maik is probably my least favorite one. He's just kind of boring to me, and compared to the novelty of the Morrowind Maik and the expanded role of the Skyrim Maik, he just, I don't know. The overwhelming majority of the stuff he says is just veiled jabs at the players or quasi-defensive toned comments. Not that that's a bad thing, I mean it's funny and that's the role that he has, but in Skyrim it just gets much stranger. Some extra tidbits about this Maik though is he is given the honor of being an essential NPC, meaning no matter how hard you try, you cannot kill him. This was kind of the true beginning of the theories as far as him being some sort of god or something, because essential status is usually only given to those that need to be alive for a quest, but it's probably also just another joke altogether. He has also class changed from rogue to savant, and I think this is perhaps more fitting of an all-knowing nonsense machine like him. So, a little lore break here. Is this, and this, the same Maik? Well, physically speaking, absolutely not. The dude has different legs, but given the overall changes between games, if we just accept that he looks different, this could feasibly be the same Khajiit. Morrowind and Oblivion take place only a few years apart, and if Morrowind Maik is as rich as he looks, he could have easily found passage out of Vardenfell before things go a little crazy there. But one thing is for certain, the Skyrim version of Maik simply cannot be the same guy, because the events of Skyrim take place around 200 years later. That is a large leap of time for a Khajiit. Now, if he's immortal or a god or something, that's a different story, but we'll get to that later. On to the frozen northern lands of Skyrim. So the clock has been pumped forward, as I mentioned, quite a bit, to the 4th era, the year 201. Now, I say this is possibly the most popular version of the character, because this is by far the most popular game in the series. It shattered sales records for the company and brought Elder Scrolls to every average boob gamer's living room. But with that streamlining and boom of popularity in the mainstream audience, came more things being removed that people enjoyed from the previous games. Some of the weirder mechanics that hardcore fans had grown to love. Maybe Bethesda anticipated some kickback, so they loaded up Maik with plenty of ammunition. A lot of snarky things to say in anticipation. But I also believe this is the best Maik because they expanded his repertoire to include a few more oddities, lighthearted things when compared to Oblivion. Also, his voice acting now is literally perfect.
Maik knows much and tells some. Maik knows many things others do not.
The ease and the sleaze of a wandering liar, it's so good. This is by far the most difficult Maik to find, as he just randomly roams around the world. No plans, no schedules, no calipers to hunt down. And a fun fact here, if you use the console to teleport to him, you will find yourself in a walled-off cell deep under the ground. This is a place where the game keeps Maik until he is set loose in the world. The cell in the files is known as Elsewhere, which is pretty funny. And I can't believe I almost didn't mention this, he has 3 bottles of skooma in his pocket, this being the first time Maik is actually linked to heavy drug use. So if you are lucky enough to find him, he will this time share 3 things with you, and then tell you to piss off.
Maik's father was also called Maik, as was Maik's father's father. At least, that is what his father said.
This quote became an instant classic, and while it's an obvious nod to the 2 previous Maiks, it has always caused a little bit of a stir lore-wise surrounding him. What if there's like a little secret Khajiit clan all named Maik? What if Maik is the spirit of a lost divine stuck in the lineage of some cat people? Everything is on the table with this quote, and that's all by design.
Don't try blocking if you have two weapons. You will only get confused. Much better to hit twice anyway.
Dual wielding is something brand new with Skyrim. And just as he says, attempting to block will only lead to a second swing. There are some clever mods out there though that add like this cross block thing that I usually use, so I'm going around you this time, Maik, sorry.
How does anyone know there was a city of Winterhold? Maik did not see it with his eyes. Did you?
Winterhold is of course where the college is in Skyrim in place of the usual Mages Guild. But long ago, it was a massive city, the capital of the entirety of Skyrim. However, what we see in-game, if I'm being honest, is a little pathetic. A little smattering of buildings with like some rubble down on the cliff below. They say the city fell into the Sea of Ghosts, but there isn't much ruin here or proof that any bustling metropolis once existed, even with what is left. But I also think that this quote is a reference to the first game in the series, Arena. This would be the last time chronologically in-game that Winterhold was still poppin', and Maik had not been invented yet, so we never saw it.
The people of Skyrim are more open-minded about certain things than people in other places.
Gotta love those progressive Nords, man. In Skyrim, you can do things that previously were not possible. You can summon the dead in a town square. Obviously, that would have been a crime in the past and you'd get chased out of town. But you can also do things like participate in same-sex marriage and drug use without any repercussions. Skyrim is just a little bit ahead of the curve, I think.
Maik knows why Falmer are blind. It has nothing to do with the Dwemer disappearing. Really.
The Elder Scrolls V added a large chapter of lore to the mysterious story of the Dwemer people. It was the Dwemer who corrupted the once handsome-as-shit snow elves and turned them into the blind, monstrous creatures we find now. The Falmer then waged war with the Dwemer up until they disappeared from existence with the activation of the Numidium back in Morrowind. So this quote, I honestly agree. No one knows for sure why the Dwemer vamoosed, but I don't feel like the Falmer have a darn thing to do with it. But of course, this is Maik, so maybe this is his way of telling us the Falmer's blindness has everything to do with it.
Maik has heard it is dangerous to be your friend.
There are many characters in Skyrim that you can recruit as followers to help you on your journey, and as you can imagine, this is dangerous work. The Dragonborn is literally cheating death all the time while committing mass murder, going to Sovngarde, killing god dragons, ancient vampires. I wouldn't sign up to do that shit, would you? This is probably also a reference to the ability for the player to kill followers or sacrifice them in various ways. Maik is spitting straight facts right here, man. No one is safe near me. No lie detected at all.
Maik can travel fast across the land. Some lazy types take carriages. It is all the same to Maik.
Remember how Maik had those wheels in Oblivion? Well, he doesn't have that insane ability anymore, but what he's also talking about is the introduction of the carriage system. This is kind of like Silt Striders in Morrowind, honestly, a way to pay and fast travel city to city, but originally it was intended to be done in real time, with your character sitting on the back chatting up the driver, maybe even fending off some bandit attacks. That would have been really cool.
Maik loves the people of Skyrim. Many interesting things they say to each other.
It's no secret that adding full voice acting to Oblivion resulted in a mixed bag, let's say.
Flying in the sky, cliff racer fly so high, flying.
Greetings, Dunmer.
What's the latest?
It was a hugely ambitious thing to attempt, and the radiant dialogue just ended up being hilarious. I personally would not change this at all. Oblivion, believe it or not, is my favorite Elder Scrolls game, and a large part of that is the jank it has, it's charming to me. I like it. And as Maik says, it is much improved in Skyrim as far as variety and flavor, and you just don't hear the same three things repeated and repeated.
Nords are so serious about beards. So many beards. Maik thinks they wish they had glorious manes like Khajiit.
Now this one's the kind of thing you don't even realize until you compare it, but beards do not exist in Oblivion at all. Not for player characters or any NPCs except one, Sheogorath. It's funny when you kind of take a step back and look at Cyrodiil. It was this land of childless, hairless adults of middle to old age that spoke to walls and all had strikingly similar voices. What a masterpiece. But with the next adventure being in Skyrim, home of the Nords, of course, Beards had to make a big debut here in 3D, and he has to flex his Khajiit follicle fountain. Nords don't have that.
Maik was soul-trapped once. Not very pleasant. You should think about that once in a while.
When you think about it, the player is capable of some seriously messed up stuff in these games. Maybe we need a little reality check every once in a while to remember that you are quite literally trapping someone's soul eternally in this gem until spent. That's one hell of a punishment for just being like a bandit. The player's ability to do bad so willy-nilly is definitely something that Maik has a few words about over the years, and as far as him having his soul trapped, I have my doubts.
It does not matter to Maik how strong or smart one is. It only matters what one can do.
For literally decades and decades, the Elder Scrolls series was built on the classic backbone of having attributes, strength, speed, endurance, intelligence, those kind of things to track the type of build you're going for. Well, of course, in Skyrim, they did away with the whole system, streamlining it to allow you to just pick up whatever you wanted, whatever weapon or activity, and gain skills in that thing. Maik, I guess, is all about that action.
Some like taking friends on adventures. Maik thinks being alone is better. Less arguing about splitting treasure.
Well, at this point, it wouldn't be Maik without some comments on multiplayer functionality. And yep, as you all know, Skyrim remained a rigorously single-player experience. Although now, today, I wonder what Maik would make of the many mod projects that have attempted to add lag-free shared world co-op. Maybe he would change his mind.
Some say Alduin is Akatosh. Some say Maik is a liar. Don't you believe either of those things?
This is a heavy lore sack right here. So if you are further interested in Alduin, check out my Villainpedia on him where we dive into all the theories and whatnot surrounding the character. But prior to Skyrim existing, Alduin was indeed the Nordic pantheon's version of Akatosh, the dragon god of time. But with him being the main villain here, the world eater gone wrong attempting to rule mortals and yada yada, it seems that the two were actually very different beings from the start. It's a confusing topic, and there are lots of in-game books and commentary from other characters regarding the whole mess, but regardless, this is one of the most incredible Maik lines of all time because of the contradictory nature of it. It is simple and beautiful how much this twisted the minds of people when they first heard it. Also, his acknowledgement that people regard him as a liar is interesting and fun.
Nord's armor has lots of fur. This sometimes makes Maik nervous.
A very understandable worry and a pretty funny thing to bring attention to. Scale armors and armors with all sorts of furs and hides have been commonplace in all of the games. I mean, there's a chance, I'm just saying, that some of those might be made from the beast race's fallen comrades. I'm sure it's happened somewhere in the lore, and it would be odd for us today to know cat people who wore skin clothing and greeted us with smiles. Maik does a wonderful job of making us question the things that were always there right in front of us, under our noses, and we just accept.
Maik is very practical. He has no need for mysticism.
On the surface, this seems like Maik is simply getting comfortable with you and sharing something about himself. He's a meat and potatoes kind of Khajiit. No nonsense, just give me my robes and some sandals, and I'll walk thousands of miles over the course of 250 years, no problem. But this is actually a reference to the mysticism school of magic being removed from the series. This was the tree that was home to like spells that reflected, absorbed, or dispelled magic, as well as moving objects with your mind and sensing life and stuff like that. It was definitely a more minor tree, but I kind of liked that it was separate. It had more of an identity. All those spells were eventually, well, absorbed into the other schools.
Maik does not remember his childhood. Perhaps he never had one.
To this day, believe it or not, no beast race children have been seen in the mainline games. It would seem that they don't exist at all aside from lore and books and whatnot, and assuming that these beings had to have been birthed at some point. But I mean, it took until the 5th game to have children at all, so I would not be surprised if in Elder Scrolls 6 there are some little lizards and kittens running around that you can talk to or even adopt.
Maik once walked to High Hrothgar. So many steps, he lost count.
Yeah, of course you did, Maik. But the legendary 7,000 steps up to High Hrothgar is a pillar of Nordic culture and myth. Those lucky enough to take the pilgrimage and meet with the Greybeards sing songs of the experience for the rest of their lives. But this is a joke all about that actual step count, because in reality, I counted, there are around 730 steps from top to bottom, nowhere near even 1,000.
Dragons were never gone. They were just invisible and very, very quiet.
This one is a tough nut to crack. On one hand, it's definitely a callback to his comment on the invisible dragons in Morrowind, but it could also be something else. Maybe it's that they were all buried out of sight and quiet because they were dead. Maybe it's that they're just kind of disabled in the game until you trigger events in the story and then they come alive and start flying around. I'm honestly not so sure. Let me know what you think about this one. I'm curious.
Something strange happens to Khajiit when they arrive in Skyrim.
This is for sure a comment just about the beast races being redesigned yet again in Skyrim. These poor bastards just cannot get any continuity.
Werebears? Where? Bears? Men that are bears?
The lore of the realm of Skyrim was pretty insane before we actually went there, and amongst the cool kind of druidic stuff that was talked about were werebears. Many fans anticipated being able to become a werewolf and assumed that werebear would be an option for Nord characters, or there would be some sort of path to becoming one, or maybe you could meet one, but none of that was the case, and players would actually have to wait until the final DLC to travel to Solstheim and just see werebears as common enemies.
Why do soldiers bother with target practice? One learns best by hitting real people.
In Skyrim, you only gain experience and skills when you actually hit what is called a valid target. That can be an enemy or an ally, it doesn't really matter, but it has to be like a living creature. And there are so many guards and soldiers throughout the region that spend their entire coded lives shooting arrows or training with dummies for absolutely no technical reason. It's also kind of funny that Maik is again an essential NPC, but hitting him causes no bounty to be put on your head. So a lot of people have used him as an invincible valid target punching bag to pump their skills up. But don't worry, I would never dream of hitting my mans. That's my sweet baby boy.
Maik does not understand what is so impressive about shouting. Maik can shout whenever he wants.
I mean, it is kind of funny that the dragon language and the powers are referred to as just shouts. It's kind of simple, isn't it? They could have used like the dragon tongue word for power word or tongue lash or something a little more mysterious and Nordic.
Maik saw a mud crab the other day. Horrible creatures.
You remember when we were talking about how stiff the Radiant dialogue in Oblivion was? Well, one of the most common things you would hear would be this drab, one-sided conversation about seeing a mud crab.
What's going on with you?
I ran into a couple of mud crabs not long ago. Annoying creatures.
Well, at least they're slow and not too bright. Their pincers are sharp, though.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goddamn, I love that game. And I guess Maik stopped to listen while he was Naruto running around Cyrodiil.
Maik is always in search of calipers, yet he finds none. Where could they have gone?
What a goddamn good question, Maik. This poor bastard spent every waking hour of his existence, starting at noon, in Oblivion searching for calipers, collecting them all to measure whatever he needed to measure, and here in Skyrim, there isn't a pair of calipers in sight, not in the game period. Who knows why this sort of junk miscellaneous item was omitted from the loot table, but I would not be surprised if they took it out purely to have Maik say something about it.
Maik has heard the people of Skyrim are better looking than the ones in Cyrodiil. He has no opinion on the matter. All people are beautiful to him.
So along with adding beards to the equation, Skyrim definitely had the best looking character models to date, as you would expect with the most recent release. However, Maik should really be mentioning how odd the people in Cyrodiil often look to him, because that character creator, it allowed you to create some absolutely incredible pieces of art, man.
Maik hears many stories of war, yet few of them are true.
This one could definitely go a few different ways. Some have said this is Bethesda making fun of themselves for having in-game, quote, epic battles be extremely small in scale due to the limitations of the game engine. However, it could also be a reference to the many, many wars that are spoken about extensively in the lore. A bit of a joke about us, who take all of the history books written by the victors as law.
Much snow in Skyrim. Enough snow. Maik does not want any more.
At first glance, this is a cold kitty complaining about the environment, but it ends up being a bit more. Skyrim was supposed to have dynamic snow physics, where it would build up on roofs and windowsills and then melt in the sunlight. This would have led to a more dynamic world, of course, where the topography changed based on the weather. And obviously, this was just way too ambitious. And it's a small feature still, where there's like pre-scripted clumps of snow that grow and shrink, but it's a far cry from the initial vision. With so many of these things, it feels like Bethesda's ideas are always incredible, but they were all just like spending too much time in the conference room talking about it, getting hella juice, like yeah, and then they all look at the clock at the same time and they're like, dude, shit, we have to make the game now, and they run to their computers and they have to throw it together in a crunch so things don't make it. It's kind of tragic.
Snow falls. Why worry where it goes? Mike thinks the snowflakes are pretty.
This is the second snow comment, and I think this one could be connected to the previous quote, but also I interpret it as a joke about snow falling into some interior cells like tents, buildings, where, of course, that shouldn't be happening and the roof should be catching it, but I guess Mike doesn't mind much.
Skyrim was once the land of many butterflies. Now, not so much.
This one's very interesting and funny, and I'm honestly not sure how this information originally surfaced or if it's ever even been confirmed, but legends tell of a massive bug early on in Skyrim's development that led to butterflies never spawning and despawning correctly in the world for it to feel organic. This led to an absolute metric fuckton of butterflies, literally blocking out the sun and bogging down performance just a little bit, you can imagine. So this is some deep insider lore that somehow got out, if it is true. And all the quotes that are like this are really interesting to me, so if you know anything about this one or where this information came from, please let me know.
Maik carries 2 weapons to be safe. What if one breaks? That would be most unlucky.
Love it or hate it, durability is a long-standing pillar of old-school RPGs and immersive video games across the board. Well, Skyrim, unsurprisingly, did away with the whole thing. While many purists of the old-school stylings mourn the loss of tons of things in the series, I rarely hear a peep about durability and repairing your gear being nixed.
Too much magic can be dangerous. Maik once had 2 spells and burnt his sweet roll.
Honestly, I'm shocked it took Maik this long to make some sort of mention of sweet rolls, dude. The dessert treats have long been a running gag central in the Elder Scrolls as well as Fallout series. And this one is also speaking to the fact that you could now kind of overcharge your spells by having one in either hand, dual casting it.
What does this mean to combine magic? Magic plus magic is still magic.
Oh man, combining magic. This was one of the rumors prior to release that really excited me back in high school. Everyone knew about the dual casting being present, but it was heavily anticipated that you would be able to kind of weave spells together to create new ones on the fly in combat. Oh my god, that would have been badass, bro, especially given that they removed crafting spells entirely, which is tragic. It just would have been awesome to have some creativity with the system. But Maik is not impressed as usual. He's not one for spells, after all, as in every game, he just kind of has a dagger and some robes. Simple guy. Whew, so that is all the unique quotes from Skyrim, and goddamn, there are a lot more, huh? And I think this Maik is by far the best one. I know I said that already, but I'm just doubling down, baby. He has far more personality and nuance. He says things that are direct commentaries as well as a few lore head-scratchers and sort of loose ends. Also, turning him into a true random encounter where you can't lure him with calipers or go pull up on his location did wonders. If you have a character who is this odd, mysterious, and kind of talked about, creating scarcity for the player I think is key. It almost feels like he finds you when he feels you are ready for his thoughts. It really adds to the flavor in a big way, and I can easily say that this Maik is the one that took the character to legendary status. But hold the phone. There is one more Maik, a version that I admit I am not as well versed in, the one found in the Elder Scrolls Online. ESO is not a game that I have personally played a ton of. I think I got to like 30 or 35 and really enjoyed some things and not so much others, but I just overall didn't stick around for the long haul and endgame content, all that jazz. So I hate to do this, but for this section, I just can't be pulling everything he says, because frankly a lot of his quotes are in relation to specific quests and happenings of that game. And of course, I am ignorant to those things. So, instead, I have decided to grab a fun little collection and highlight them here, do the same sort of thing. I am sure that somewhere on YouTube, someone else who has played a ton of ESO can do a better job beyond that. And to be honest, I'm just not going to sink that many hours into an MMO for one video, boys. I apologize, I'm sure you understand. But I do really like how they implemented him into ESO. Exploration is not only a key aspect to the Elder Scrolls series, but any MMO worth its salt. I mean, I gotta be able to find a bunch of secrets and treasures speckled throughout the land. And Maik is one of those open world secrets. He has a very small chance to appear in several specific areas within specific zones, and has nearly 100 quotes. I mean, damn. That is a big time expansion pack from what we had in the past, and another reason I'm not gonna go through all of them. Speaking of which, I don't pay for the subscription plus thing on ESO, so I straight up don't have access to the full game and all of those zones. Thus, I'm going to be referencing another video by YouTuber Komodo Saurian, and I will link it below. They seem to have compiled a lot of the interactions you can have with Maik, and if you want to see the whole thing, please go do so and give their channel some love. Also important to note that this game takes place many centuries before the main series, so this is technically the very first Maik chronologically speaking, so let's get to some of these.
Sometimes people disappear in front of Maik. Are invisibility potions so affordable?
As you guessed, many of these are going to be related to the fact that he is now stuck in a massively multiplayer game, opposed to a single-player one. This quote is referring to players logging out and vanishing before Maik's eyes. Entire living beings popping in and out of existence. It must be a traumatic and confusing life for an NPC stuck in an MMO, don't you think?
Wood elves aren't made of wood. Sea elves aren't made of water. Maik still wonders about high elves.
Oh yeah, baby, we have known for years that Maik loves his moon sugar, his skooma, and probably other recreational drugs, but now he is making big weed jokes about Altmer. I quite like that. This Maik overall is much more full of jokes and quips than he is sassy critique of the fanbase, which is refreshing, but also kind of dulls the edge of his presence a little bit for me.
Maik cares little for politics. Truly, he thinks everyone is his ally.
Many MMOs after World of Warcraft fell in line with tons of trends, and that includes player factions. Forces within the lore that are opposed for whatever reason, and when you pick your race, you are also signing up for a particular force. ESO has 3, but over time the restrictions of the faction borders have all but melted away, essentially making everyone your ally for the majority of the game time.
The elves here have so many titles, all of them fancy. Maik prefers a simple one.
Titles are another MMO feature that have always been a huge draw. I know for me, I am completely addicted to collecting them. It's like they're a merit badge, you know, a way to show off some insane thing you wasted time doing, and you want to flex on your homies and people out in the world. But Maik definitely has the greatest title there is.
Maik wants nothing to do with Daedra. He hears they can make trees burn forever. How can they do that?
Finally, a reference to the older games. Here we go. In Oblivion, wherever an Oblivion gate is, trees nearby will catch fire and burn, literally, forever. I'm honestly not sure if that was a bug or meant to be an actual representation of the staying power of Mehrunes Dagon's evil, but either way, it freaks out the cat, so let's knock that off.
Can vampires have families? How? Perhaps Maik does not wish to know.
In the Dawnguard expansion pack for Skyrim, Lord Harkon and all of his vampire lineage are central to the plot. But Maik brings up a pretty damn good point. Would 2 vampires have a kid and that kid is a vampire? Or would it be a normal baby and they gotta immediately bite and drink the blood of their baby? Also, if you want to become a vampire lord in that game, you have to partake in like this family ritual thing.
Maik was told to stay away from Oldgate. This confused him. Maik remembers when it was called Gate.
This is one of the few quotes that calls direct attention to Maik's apparent age and or lineage. Oldgate is, well, an old-ass gate between Stormhaven and Rivenspire, and you could actually visit this in the first ever game in the series. This suggests, of course, that Maik is extremely old. Who knows how long a gate needs to be around before it's called Oldgate, but as always, I don't totally believe you, Maik. I'm sorry, I don't think you knew that guy when his name was Gate.
Maik's father was Kiam, from a long line of Kiams. But Maik does not believe this. His father was a known liar.
Khajiit lore is extremely deep and honestly insane. There are dozens of different subspecies, crazy racial practices. It just gets weirder and cooler the deeper you go. So when I first heard this, I might think, oh damn, like what is that? Some sort of sage, like all-knowing, far-seeing cat wizard? No, it's just Maik backwards.
Maik speaks with many in his travels. After a time, they seem to repeat themselves. Strange.
I think this is a quip about how he compares with the other average NPCs in the series. Those who just kind of repeat the same rumors and dialogue over and over again. Kind of like that other quote earlier on, it must be boring to be this kind of woke, self-aware video game character stuck with all these zombies.
Some like to buy the whole meal. Others want to pay for what is on their plate. Maik just prefers to eat.
Ugh. Monetization, man. This is honestly one of the things that pushed me away from the Elder Scrolls Online over time, and it's sad because I really did enjoy a lot of the gameplay, the world, housing, and stories, all of it. But here, to me, Maik is saying, some people want to buy all the crown shop bullshit. Mounts, pets, cosmetics, entire houses. And then there are some who want to pay for ESO Plus to have full access to all the game areas and DLCs. But me, Maik, I'm a free-to-play player. Listen, I have no problem with paying a sub fee, okay? It's the game stores that bug me in MMOs. All the coolest cosmetics and pets and mounts being store exclusives, it just pisses me off, man, and it makes me kind of annoyed that they infected Maik with this propaganda. Okay, back on track.
A bartender told Maik he must wait outside until tavern was clean. It was only a short time, so Maik did not mind.
This one I quite like. Scheduled maintenance is part of every live service or server-based video game. Usually like once a week, servers are reset for progression reasons, little bug fixes, and occasionally content updates. And the fact that he equates the game server to his tavern is very appropriate. Maik just wants to chill and talk to people.
Maik would rather travel in rain than fix holes in the roof after a storm. Maik hates patching holes.
And this one, I saved for last for good reason. Elder Scrolls games have a bit of a reputation for being buggy, and very buggy when they first release, from game-breaking to immersion-breaking to just downright hilarious. To me, this quote is Maik saying, I'd rather just keep going to the next game, next DLC, next content update, or whatever, with the existing bugs, than to go back and fix the original framework of the game that remains buggy. It's legitimately horrifying to me that a game company would have this philosophy and inject it with some humor onto Maik, but this is exactly what Bethesda has done for literally decades. It has always fallen on the shoulders of fans and modders to fix these games themselves, with the unofficial patches being more comprehensive and effective than anything the actual company usually puts out. To this day, vanilla Oblivion has potentially game-saved destroying bugs. I mean, it's kind of insane. And there are many, many more things ESO Maik has to say, but a good chunk of them are also, believe it or not, behind a paywall. He was a buyable house guest for some period of time, essentially like a piece of furniture that doubles as that famous NPC, and the only way to hear many unique pieces of dialogue was to take out your credit card. I wish that that was a lie. So if you would like for me to cover those lines, please comment your bank information down below and I'll deliver it to you pronto. I promise. But let's end it on a positive note. There is a little bit of unique dialogue unlocked when you complete the I Like Maik achievement, which entails like tracking him down at a long list of locations. So it's pretty cool that there is kind of a progression system to hear more from him. I think that's something that could really be fun for the Elder Scrolls 6 to try out when he inevitably returns to Tamriel. An hour later, right? That was a lot of quick turn analysis, I know. So now that you have a healthy amount of Maik under your belt from across the years, it's lore theory time. And I have to say at the top here, all Maik theories begin with the acceptance and the knowledge of his function as a character, a stand-in for the developers and all that. But as I said at the top, it's still also up to the fan base to frame this character somehow within the game world and story. You could almost, and dare I say it, make theories about Maik purely for fun. And with that, our first theory, Maik has achieved Kim and is the most self-aware character in the entire series, to the point of entering godhood and understanding the very design choices of his universe. Kim is a hotly debated thing with the Elder Scrolls fandom. In some ways, it's a fan-made explanation of certain things that are in the lore, but also, it's absolutely present in some form in the game. I mean, look no further than Vivek. This is when you have an existential breakthrough and come to the realization that all of reality is but a dream of a sleeping god or godhead. But see, coming to this conclusion can result in two very, very different things. If you have a strong enough conviction, you can say, I must still exist, and you can retain your sanity in physical form. Essentially, you are now lucid dreaming inside of this god's dream of which you were dreamed up, and you yourself become a god. You can alter reality, past, present, and future to your liking. Or, the much more likely outcome is you're like, wait, what a second, I don't even exist. Many theorize that the latter is what happened to the entire Dwemer race, hence their total disappearance. So then Maik. He certainly seems to be extremely aware that the reality around him is nothing more than a flexible, ever-changing and evolving landscape built for entertainment. But his backstory is so non-existent and mysterious, there's no way of really knowing or justifying how he could have achieved this state whatsoever. You could say, he was a wizard in ancient times, dabbling in the raw magic of the new world, and cracked some sort of code. To the player and other inhabitants, he is just a madman talking nonsense out of his ass about were-sharks and cut content to a point of notoriety where people call him the liar. But across a lot of human mythology and fantasy, it is the fool, the old hermit, the cast-off scholar that seems crazy and disconnected who is actually the most lucid one in the land. This is a fun theory for sure. Vivek was aware he was in a dream, but Maik being aware that he is in a video game about being in a dream and communicating with his gods, the developers, it all fits together rather nicely, but keeps enough mystery intact as well. That being said, the second theory is probably my favorite one, that Maik is the dreamer. And full credit goes to Reddit user Ride the Line over on Tessalore for this one. I'm going to link the original post he made in the description, and please do read through it if you find it at all compelling, because he's going to do a much better job explaining most of these things. He presents the idea that all of mundus and mortal life is merely a test, that all living beings are being observed within the dream to assess if any can transcend their status and reach a higher plane of understanding and existence. In essence, if any can achieve Kim and take hold of the infinity of their reality. So, if you accept the theory that Anu the Everything, the primordial concept that predates even the Aedra and Daedra, is indeed the sleeping godhead, and that when someone is sleeping, even you or I, we are always aware of ourselves, even subconsciously, it stands to reason that the being who is dreaming is walking around somewhere in Tamriel, experiencing their dream firsthand. This sort of avatar for the dreamer would have unlimited wisdom of the universe and all of its shortcomings, but would have to appear as humble and normal as possible. You don't want biblically accurate angels walking around scaring the shit out of people in your dream. So this theory presents this avatar as a sort of proctor, a guide to help along the inhabitants of the dream in hopes that some of them, if not just one of them, are able to ascend their understanding to Kim levels or what have you. This is why Maik often talks about things that are missing from the game, because when you and I are having a dream about, say, a kitchen and there's no blender in the kitchen, it's just because your brain skipped over that part. It doesn't exist. This is why he is able to so candidly say without hesitation, blocking with 2 weapons? What the hell are you talking about? Why would you want to do that? Because as the dreamer, this is the reality that he has created. Okay, now, take into account who the player character is that interacts with Maik in each game. The Nerevarine, the Champion of Cyrodiil, the Last Dragonborn, and the Vestige. Maik is not coming and talking to any old bums, but only those of note in the fabric of history. We are casting him off as a meme or funny Easter egg to our own detriment, for it could be the Proctor himself, attempting to guide us to warmer sands in the way of enlightenment. The theory goes on a bit, and it is just so cool to me. Definitely the most unique take on this character, and honestly, one that makes the most sense when you're trying to justify him lore-wise. Really good stuff. Now to the final theory we will look at today, because holy smokes, I've been editing this video for 17 hours straight and my buns hurt. And that theory is, Maik is a Daedra. This one is decidedly more simplistic, but still important to the Maik theoryverse. Because this was probably the first theory to ever arise about the character given his knowledge of the Daedric ruin in Morrowind, and otherwise otherworldly level of information to be shared. Overall, the Daedra are fascinating. Each one is so unique from its peers, the lines between good and evil so blurred that it's hard to pass proper judgment on any of them individually. And Maik, being a member of this exclusive crew, has 2 branching possibilities. One is that he is one of these existing Daedra in disguise, or 2 is that he is an undiscovered Daedra, a rogue deity that hides amongst the common folk of Tamriel. So then which deities could Maik be in secret? Well, appropriately, Boethia is the prince of secrets and deceit, amongst other things. Or what about Hermaeus Mora, prince of knowledge and memory, a being that desires to learn all of the forbidden information it can get its hands on. You also can't overlook Mephala, prince of unknown plots and the master manipulator. Or perhaps, most of all, Sheogorath, Deogic prince of madness, whose motives are completely unknown even to himself. It's all a matter of perspective. But it is, admittedly, more fun to imagine him as like a rogue Daedra, perhaps the Prince of Observation, whose sphere of power is so singular and focused. Everything he says is a bunch of hooey to everyone else because they're beneath him in skill. I just think all of these things are so fun to think about, especially because we know that it's none of these things and it's all just a developer joke, but that's what's good about the Elder Scrolls, Dark Souls, Warcraft, whatever fictional universe it is. The fans are going to talk circles around even the most meaningless things simply because we want to, because it's damn fun. Overall, the legacy of Maik the Liar is amazing to me. And if I could liken him to another character in fantasy, it would honestly, and don't shoot me, be Tom Bombadil from The Lord of the Rings. Now, of course, Tom isn't commenting on literary criticism of The Hobbit or anything like that, but he is this mysterious presence that no one within Middle-earth can fully understand or explain. What he says is simultaneously profound and meaningless. Those who cross his path don't really know what to make of him overall, but they do know that they are in the company of someone far beyond the average mortal. He has this air about him of ancient power and mystery, a character that we all want to know more about, but never will. Maik carries that mantle here in the Elder Scrolls, I feel anyway. Though the characterization is, of course, very different, the effect is the same. But Maik is also connected closely to another eternal soul of love and life. Todd Howard, director and game producer of the entire series. Todd has long had a reputation of being the source of all those promises of things that can't make it into the final product. A lovable guy who just gets a little too excited and says, "Oh yeah, absolutely. You can build an entire city with social hierarchy and train dragons and then go to space and you can climb that mountain over there." Todd has been publicly labeled a liar, and it's fitting that the developer stand-in who kind of defends all of these omissions and design choices bears the very same title. If you have made it this far into the video, you are an absolute soldier, and you are here for the eternal question, is Maik really a liar? And the answer, honestly, is no. He is not. He shares his opinion, or Bethesda's opinion, and occasionally will fragment his statements into a couple possible truths, but it is overall, statistically, rare that he says something that is this way when we know it is that way. But I think also he makes us reevaluate what we even consider a lie. Take his quote in Morrowind about becoming a lich. Sure, we can't do this ritual. I don't even know what classifies a horse as well-ridden. But how do we know that if we had all of those things and attempted such an unholy afternoon, we wouldn't become a lich instantly? This is a fantasy world, dude, of insane happenings, magic, necromancy, dragons, time travel. You name it, it's in there. So Maik is careful to rarely contradict the lore, just give you tidbits that you kinda can't prove true or false. Everything he says, everything he calls attention to, is not only a peek behind the curtain, but also showing what feedback Bethesda has heard from the fans. A way to catalog all of those things and all the generations of change that the series has endured and likely will continue to endure. Also, to light our imagination ablaze with stupid theories as we read far too much into his dialogue and make hour-long videos about him. I think of all the characters I've covered on my channel, the heroes, the villains, and the NPCs, Maik is the most unique, the strangest one by far. And it will be a bright, beautiful day on November the 7th, 3045, when the Elder Scrolls 6 finally releases and my descendants can see what Maik is going to say next. So when you're out there, exploring the landscape of Tamriel alone or with some buddies, always remember to keep some calipers in your bag and keep your ears open, because there's no telling when Maik is going to pay you a little visit. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching and listening to the end. This video, as I was writing it, ended up turning into much more of a beast than I anticipated, but I had an absolute blast making this, and I'm excited to hear your favorite Maik quotes down in the comments. A huge thank you to every new subscriber that has joined the Ghost Guild recently. Since 2022 started, I have more than doubled the subscriber count of this channel, and I'm just so glad you're all along for the ride. Thank you all, every single one of you, so much. Until next time. Peace.
Mike is tired now. Go bother somebody else.